super fun. I know just playing with the guys, playing with Ja and Jaron, all the vets too. It's just been a blessing, really, and I'm just really grateful to be here playing.
That high jump and stuff today, all right?
We'll see.
BC down the lane. Oh, what an explosion by Brandon Clarke.
You just throw the ball anywhere up near the rim. Nobody's gonna go up and get it higher than BC.
Crazy athleticism for Brandon Clarke. Soaring through the Memphis night, Brandon Clarke thunders it down.
You do not put a body on Brandon Clarke, you are asking for trouble.
Grizzlies have 3 players who will be represented in the Rising Stars game.
Have you fallen in full love with the floater yet?
I have.
Vintage Brandon Clarke.
And the bench, look at the bench reaction.
Look at them all, everybody with that right hand float. When BC is BC, the float is on point.
Oh, that's tough. Oh, the bucket, come on now.
So how would you describe Memphis? Like you're here, you know, you've been here for a while.
People here are super nice. That's probably my favorite thing about it. Everyone here has been just really kind to me. So I've been really wanting to get back to Memphis for every year that I've been here.
What's up, man? How are you, man?
I got you. Giving back is always fun, so it just feels great. I'm very grateful for the support I've had here, and I just really want to give. Hey guys, what's up? This is Brandon Clarke, and today I'm going to be reading you the book Giraffes Can't Dance. How did you learn to dance like that? Please, Gerald, tell us how. But Gerald simply trolled around and finished with a bow. Then he raised his head up and looked up at the moon and stars above. We all can dance, he said, when we find music that we love.
Two Timberwolves inside fighting. That's Karl Anthony Towns and Vanderbilt. When Brandon Clarke said, the ball is mine, I want it.
Where would they have been this series without Brandon Clarke, maybe the MVP of the series?
I don't think there's a maybe. I think it's a definite.
It's playoffs, man. This is what I've been waiting for forever, my whole life. I will do whatever it takes to win. It was really easy to feel at home.
Hell yeah, BC!
Ready up, BC!
Way to hoop, dog. Way to hoop, boy.
Yeah, baby! They can't guard you, come on! They call him the block paper trade market! I see you, boy! You know the vibe! Yeah, Luke! Yeah! I love playing you, for real. I'm proud of you, though, for real. I love you so much. Love you too, brother.
Good morning, everybody. It is good to be back with you guys. It's been an incredibly difficult week for our Grizzlies family following the tragic passing of Brandon Clarke at the age of 29. We have been off the air since Tuesday. We took that time to grieve internally, to be with each other, and to get to a place where we felt ready to come on here and to honor BC in the right way. And we continue to send endless love, peace, prayers to Brandon's family, to his friends, to those who knew him closest, but also to everybody whose lives that he touched. The beautiful thing about this city and this team and players like Brandon Clarke is there is true community here. There's true care factor. And I've heard from so many of you over the last few days, and I know that you're grieving too. You're grieving too. But we are all here together this morning, and there's no easy way to talk about this. There is no roadmap for how we move forward when a life is taken far too soon, and especially someone like Brandon, who is just this wonderful, this warm, and this genuinely good person. The unfairness of it can be compounding, but we wanted to reflect on his time as a Grizzly. We wanted to come here this morning and share some of our favorite memories. I'm joined this morning with Lang Whitaker and John Roser. We'll continue to have the Grind City Media shows throughout the day, but they will all be about Brandon Clarke. And it feels appropriate because it is May 15th. And Brandon, of course, wore the number 15 here in Memphis. Before that, he wore the number 15 at Gonzaga. I have a lot of friends and family in Spokane, and I know that's a community that has certainly been grieving this week as well. So we will try our best to honor him and his legacy. Yeah. And I was looking at Brandon's Instagram page, and I saw his quote in his bio, which is a Gladiator quote. And Brandon loved movies. One of my favorite things every year when we would do our annual Grizz Files on Media Day for the Grizzlies was talk about what movies Brandon was watching at that point. And so the quote comes from Gladiator, and it says, "What we do in life echoes in eternity." And the very cool thing and the very moving thing about someone like Brandon is he did so much in his life, and it will echo through eternity. So I'll start with you, Lang, and ask your first memories of Brandon Clarke and what you've reflected on in the last few days.
Well, first of all, that was really well said. Good job. And I know we're all kind of like emotional, and it's like raw still, and it's hard to deal with. So nice job kind of setting all this up. I guess my first memory is, the 2019 draft and the Grizzlies trade up, and I didn't really know much about Brandon Clarke. A lot of these times with guys when they get drafted, you hear the knocks against them as opposed to like what they can do. And with Brandon, it was like, oh well, his arms are too short. His jump shots. His coach said he had a screwed up jump shot. Mark Few. There was things that he needed to work on, and the Grizzlies traded up to get him, and thought, this is somebody who has things that they can do. And then like right away, remember there was like a little trade stuff, paperwork. So he didn't come to training camp or to summer league right away. He showed up like a day or two late. But then he shows up and he wins the freaking MVP. He's the first player to ever win the MVP of the championship game and of the entire summer league. And Taylor Jenkins was coaching the team. Remember, that was like his first like kind of foray into it. So right away, Brandon showed up, and we was like, oh, like look at this guy catch lobs. Look at all this stuff he can do. Like he can guard everybody on the front line. He can jump through the roof. The jump shot's kind of getting there. And then the floater comes along. Like all these different parts of his game developed. And you use the phrase, the people whose lives he touched. And I was thinking, like that's all of us here in Memphis. Like it's a city where, we run into our heroes at the grocery store, at the gas stations, different places. And so I think like everyone here we all felt like we knew Brandon. He was kind of part of our lives. And with this being the only NBA team he ever played for, like there was a sense of camaraderie, I think, there. And so, it's a tough week, and we're all just trying to kind of get through this.
Yeah, the Summer League was really the coming out party, and such a quick way for fans here to be like, I like that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I want to root for that guy. And you talk about the camaraderie, and Rosa, you and I were talking before we got started today, just about when thinking of Brandon Clarke, you immediately think of him and his teammates, because he was just the ultimate teammate. He was always, if he was on the bench, he was gassing guys up. If he was on the court, he was a very vocal leader with that group. And I think of all the times in the locker room and the joking around. Where do you find yourself reflecting on BC?
Yeah, when I think about him, my memories of him are, the times where you're in the locker room after the game waiting to get audio and you see the interaction with the teammates. A great job by our video crew with that video tribute that we saw there at the beginning. And the joy he had playing for his teammates, playing with his teammates, and what you saw from that clip is what you would see even behind the scenes in the locker room after a win. It's not just, going and high-fiving one or two of the guys. It's every single one of those guys on the team. And you see the video that we watched right there at the beginning, and it's him, dapping up Kyle Anderson and Luke Kennard. And then there's John Moran, and then there's Jaren Jackson Jr., who he did share. They shared a very special friendship together. And yeah, I think it's those moments. That's what I remember, just being in that locker room and the moments that he shared with those teammates, and just the joy he had playing for his teammates and playing with his teammates.
I would also just add, like this week we've seen like all the former teammates come out and have like their own kind of specific memories of Brandon. Like, and it's rookie guys he played with this year. It's Kyle Anderson. It's guys who've been around this league for a long time. He clearly had relationships with everybody. It wasn't just a guy who's a veteran guy who hangs out with several of the rookies were like, I felt like I was your rook. Like he kind of took it upon himself to mentor these guys. So I think like, a lot of times today there's these athletes and they have to have a podcast. They have to have this, they have to have that, social media presence. Like Brandon just wanted to hoop. Like he just cared about basketball and his team and being a team player. And I think that speaks so much of him and kind of what he stood for.
Yeah, and on the court, I think when we will always remember his legacy and perhaps the moment that everybody, or should I say the series, that everybody really, really fell deeply in love with Brandon Clarke was that series against the Timberwolves, because many of us will go as far as to say the Grizzlies don't win that series without Brandon Clarke.
It felt like he saved us in that series.
I mean, he had 7 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter of Game 5, and I know many have shared the highlight, which is one of my favorite all-time moments sitting in FedEx Forum, of that long tip back that felt like it went to the moon and ends up in the hands of Ja, and he hits the 3, and that place just erupted. And I think looking back on that series, what was so easy to grasp onto with Brandon for fans here in the city is he's so perfectly embodied the grit and grind that had come through, and just what he showed on that court, the drive, the we are not going to lose this game kind of mentality. And I saw tributes from Timberwolves fans throughout this week who said, man, I mean, you talk about a guy who made our team make changes, bringing in someone like Rudy Gobert, not having been able to quite know what to do with the size of Brandon Clarke coming off the bench. And I'll always remember that season, Mike Wallace, who is going to be on Grind City Media later today, and I'm sure he'll share this as well. But on the radio broadcast, we deemed Brandon Clarke and Tyus Jones as the Boost brothers, because they'd come in off the bench, and it was just this energizer, bunny-like boost. And so much of it came from Brandon and his pogo stick legs, and the automatic nature of his floater, and just the energy that he brought to it.
The play you're talking about, like I watched it 20 times this week. Like, he's boxed out. Like, he's not supposed to get to that ball, but he jumps over the guy in front of him, and he realizes, I can't get this rebound. I'm just gonna knock it out. Let's just like try to keep it alive. And he did, and that's what led to that play. I actually went back and looked at that entire series game by game, because I was just trying to refresh my memory. And you remember Game 1, Steven Adams started for the Grizzlies, played a lot. Grizzlies lost. And then Game 2, Steven Adams plays like 2 minutes, and Brandon comes off the bench, and that's when it all changed. And yeah, his ability to kind of be that, he was really sort of a Swiss Army knife for that team, like, because he could do so many different things depending on kind of night to night what the team needed. Some nights they needed him to defend Rudy Gobert. Some nights they would need scoring, and Brandon could come off the bench and do those little spin moves and floaters in the lane or whatever it needed. Like, he was so valuable to the team that, and I think that series, like you mentioned, that series against the Timberwolves, that was kind of like the culmination of it all, and we got to kind of see the full Brandon Clarke in that series.
Yeah, that Timberwolves series, the biggest, one of the biggest issues they had was the Adams at center, and Karl Anthony Towns was just a problem because he can pull you all the way away from the basket. Brandon Clarke, the Swiss Army knife that he was able to, he could step out there and guard Karl Anthony Towns on the perimeter. And then when Towns tries to go at you off the dribble, Brandon Clarke, being the versatile player he is, he was able to take the contact. And just, I loved the plays you saw in those videos that just embodies, like, that is Brandon's game and how good and effective he was. The tapbacks to keep plays alive for his teammates, the block at the rim, the spin move floater in the lane. It was such a joy to watch.
That was sort of the Grizz next gen version of grit and grind, right?
It was the evolution.
Yeah. It was
and
the
it
next
felt
step.
like the core principles were still there. It was just the new aged version of it. And it is one of the reasons why when Brandon Clarke went down with that Achilles tear, it was so devastating.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because you guys sort of had a shared experience.
We did.
Timeline was similar, right?
Yes. I was actually at home recovering from my Achilles tear on the couch, and I was in a point of that recovery where I was sleeping a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, my dad was actually at that game in Denver, and I had fallen asleep, and my husband shook me awake, and he goes, Jess, I don't know how to tell you this, but they think Brandon Clarke tore his Achilles. And I just felt sick, because when you're in the beginning of it too, you just know how hard it is, and you know your life changes pretty quickly. And so I sent Brandon a message, and we proceeded to kind of go back and forth throughout both of our recoveries. And my favorite thing looking back on those messages was him being incredibly encouraging that I was so far behind on who was making progress. And at one point he said, "Don't get down on yourself. I'm a professional athlete with 7-day-a-week training. You're doing great." And he never, every single time that we'd see each other over that period, how are you doing? How's it going? What are you doing? Are you on the anti-gravity treadmill now? That's awesome. Like, you're making the leaps. And I remember media day of that following year, he had a setback, and it just hurt so bad. And yet it was so quintessential Brandon. He did the standard, setback for the major comeback. And he said, listen, I did it once. I now know what it takes. I have been able to fall in love with the process of getting back on the court and getting back in shape and getting back from an injury like that. And that's just who he was. He was such a person who brought positivity to almost every interaction that you had. And for somebody who went through so much with
Yeah,
the
these last
injuries,
few
like that's an
years.
incredible thing. And that's where he kept showing up for his teammates too. And I think that's such a special part
And
of
as
him.
someone who like cares about sneakers, I always appreciated that after the injury, he would be on the bench wearing the cool clothes like everybody else, but wearing Hokas. Like,
We bonded over because once you tear your Achilles, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
the Hoka feels better than
you
anything
need
else.
comfort.
But yes,
yeah.
exactly.
And he was like, I'm going to prioritize comfort from the ankle down at least. And he would always have the Hokas on, which I always appreciated. But
well, I think from, as media members, like, we're never
Yeah.
owed anything beyond just standard
Sure.
working communication. But Brandon is one of those players who really took the time to be kind, to know a little bit about you. And I wanted to share a story of when I first really interacted with Brandon, and it was before I worked here with the Grizzlies. I was in Memphis. I was at Local 24 working in local news, and my husband and I were dog sitting at the time, and
at the time.
we still dog sit. We were in our early days of dog sitting, and we were on this app called Rover, which is like Uber for finding dog sitters. So it's random, right? You don't know these people.
Sure, yeah.
And this woman reached out and asked if we could watch her dog for the day, and we said sure. And she dropped the dog off in the morning, and it was the cutest little dog in the world named Troy. And she said she and her boyfriend had just moved to Memphis, and they were getting, their feet set.
Troy like in Gladiator?
Maybe, yeah.
Anyway.
And she said, my boyfriend might be picking him up at the end of the day. His name's Brandon. I'll just have him communicate through me and tell you
Yeah.
when to go meet. I said, fine, no problem at all. And we spent the day with Troy, wonderful dog. Find out boyfriend's gonna pick up the dog, go downstairs, and I see Brandon Clarke standing outside my apartment complex. And I'm like, surely not this Brandon. And I'm like, Brandon? And the dog gets really excited and jumps into Brandon's arms. And he goes, oh, you're Jessica. You're from the news. And I know it sounds so simple, but for somebody of that nature, for a professional athlete to know your name and to know where you come from, he's like, I've seen you in the scrums, and we just chatted a little bit and, ended up talking about him coming from Spokane, playing at Gonzaga. We had lived in Eastern Washington, come to find out. I had actually covered that girlfriend playing high school volleyball at where we used to live. And we ended up watching the dog quite a few times as they kind of figured out their early life in Memphis. And he was just always so nice and just a normal, we talk about these guys as gladiators, right?
Yeah.
And as the men in the arena, and they're on the court and they seem bigger than life. But he was just a dude picking up his dog, and he couldn't have been nicer.
I think Roser can also attest to this, having been in locker rooms post-game, but there's a certain level of humanity you hope to get from some of these guys. And it's not always the easiest thing in the world to face the scrum after you get blown out by 35 points or after you have a bad game. But I always think of Brandon was one of those guys who was always available. And, some games you're like, all right, this is my job. I have to go talk to somebody to explain and contextualize how this team lost by 30-something points. Who can I go talk to? Brandon would do it. Maybe
And
it's
he
not
would
the
give
great
you
thing.
answers.
Yeah.
He would
Right.
give you answers, and that's not always a given either. When if your team loses by 30 points, a lot of guys, if they do talk, they don't want to give you long answers. They're just trying to get out of there too and get home because obviously they just lost by a lot. But Brandon was one of those, always would give you answers, would always give you the time, as much time as you needed.
And he was really dedicated to being thoughtful with those answers.
Yes.
Like, he tried to be introspective and to give full context in whatever way he could. And even, those Grizz files, I do them every year, and they get a little monotonous. But he specifically would say, I'm trying to give you something new this year. And I was like, I appreciate that greatly. And the funniest, just random fun fact, I would always ask, if you weren't a basketball player, what would you be? But the one thing he stayed committed to, he would have been a dentist. He was interested in teeth and dentistry.
I mean,
and
also,
I was like, you're just so interesting.
He was also really into Harry Potter.
Yes.
He was proud of his cats. He was a cat dad. Yeah. We learned more about him, and I think we were starting to kind of these last couple of years learn more about he wanted to make an impact as well off the court, and started the Brandon Clarke Foundation and was starting to get involved with different things here in the Memphis area. And we've seen people kind of pick up that mantle this week and start donating to the different charities that he was involved with. But, he was here for what, a decade almost? And it still feels like we were just kind of getting to know him in a way.
He was growing up here, and
with us.
That commitment to the community, a lot of players do work within the community, but Brandon did it without any cameras, without anything. I mean, we've seen so much of it now, but if you ask the community department here with the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think it's also such a good reminder of just so many different departments were touched by this loss, and Brandon was a stalwart in terms of showing up anytime they needed something from him. He was so often ready and available. How can I help? He did a lot of stuff with the Boys and Girls Club, and then the Arise to Read, which we've seen so many wonderful donations from here and all over the place through the Brandon Clarke Foundation. He wanted to make sure that kids were being able to find advancements in literacy and just having more and more opportunities. And he did it because that's who he was. Like, he volunteered, he showed up, and I think that's such a testament to the legacy beyond the memories that you have on the court, beyond the memories that you have of him as just this joyful person, but also like someone who truly wanted to give back.
Yeah.
Roser, any other final thoughts on Brandon Clarke?
I just keep going back to the teammate stuff, and how genuine it seemed. Like, every teammate loved this guy. They did. Everybody loved him out there. You see the video, and it's just every single one of the team. It's all of them. It spans the 7, 8, 9 years, almost decade, like Link said, that he's been here. And like I said, it's a very sad time here with the Grizzlies.
You and I talked about it on your show a couple weeks ago. There's a book that I always go back to in these times. There's a poet and a funeral director named Thomas Lynch, and he wrote about this. And he has a line that grief is the tax we pay for the love of our lives, on the love of our lives. And it's almost like a bargain you have to make, right? Like, if you're going to have all these good times, at some point that you have to deal with the grief that comes along with everything else. And that's kind of the part we're in now. And we're trying to kind of wade through this and deal with it and understand it and try to understand why he's not here anymore. And in the meantime, we just kind of soldier through, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I think what we're going to be long-term left with is the memories of just what a great dude he was, and a great teammate he was, a great Memphian that he was, and I think we're all just glad we got to be part of that.
He gave Memphis everything that he had, and I do one more time want to say, like, our thoughts are so deeply there with his family and with his teammates, and the friendship that he had with Jaren Jackson Jr. was one of the most special player-to-player friendships that I've ever had the honor of getting to see grow from the time that they were very young here with the Grizzlies, and through the years seeing that continue to develop into something really special. And I know all of the players are hurting, and our heart goes out to them forever and always. And to you all as well, we really appreciate you taking the time. We really appreciate the time that you gave us this week, and we cannot just thank you enough. Thank the Grizzlies community enough. These times are really, really difficult. But Brandon Clarke spent 7 seasons here. He gave Memphis everything he had on the court when he was physically able to, off the court, through the community, and just through the joy of the person that he was. And to go back to that Gladiator quote, what we do in life echoes in eternity. And for Brandon...
Can I throw in one thing?
Yeah.
Shout out Canada.
Shout out Canada.
Shout out Canada.
And I think that's a perfect place to go. Shout out Canada forever. We will miss you so much.